Raindrops, raindrops falling on my head. Where are you? Sunshine, sunshine shining on my face. Where are you? You're everywhere, filling every square inch of my world. This beautiful world.
All right, welcome back to it. That right there is Faith Grace with a song called Raindrops. It's a nice soothing song after I'm getting a little worked up in the last segment. Again, if you like any of the songs that you hear on the show or in the bumper music, go to the show page, 5storiesaday.com/Sunday Rap, and go check them out. Go support them. So this is the good part. This is the part that I like the most. Let's get into the constitutional part of the decision. Let's actually talk about the constitutional part, because it was determined that it was unconstitutional based on the due process and the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment. So let's actually read the 14th Amendment. Why don't we? If we're going to talk about it, let's actually read it. Let me bring it up real quick. Here we go. 14th Amendment. It's the first section that they're talking about. It says, quote, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws." That's it. That's the whole quote. That's the whole section that this decision is based on. So let's go through that. Let's take the due process first, because this is the part that I don't really understand. How is due process part of it? Because what is due process? It is the process of the law that you are due as a citizen. You have a right to due process. And so let's say, for instance, let's say I get arrested. I can't just be thrown into jail and held indefinitely, because I am due a certain process. I have to be arraigned or indicted, and I have to have a trial, and I have to have to be able to face my accusers. I have to be able to testify, so on and so forth. There is a process of the law that is due to me. That is your due process. And you can't deny somebody their due process. How this is a denial of due process is beyond me. Because if you look at that phrase is actually found in the Fifth Amendment as well. This isn't the first time it's appeared in the Constitution. And it says you can't deny somebody life, liberty, or property without due process. Well, how is this depriving somebody of life? Well, it's not. It's not depriving them of life. It's not depriving them of liberty. They still have freedom. And it's not depriving them of property either. They can claim that if they were married, they would enjoy certain tax benefits and so on and so forth. If the government recognized that they were married, they would enjoy certain tax benefits. But that is a possible future property. That is not property now. By saying that we're not going to recognize your marriage, you are not taking away their property. So how this applies on the due process clause is unknown to me. I don't really know how this comes into play. So that's the due process clause. Let's go to the equal protection clause, because this is the big one. And this is why I'm the huge nerd over here, because this is what I love doing. I love looking at this and really diving into it in depth with you guys. So let's look at this. The Equal Protection Clause, and specifically the 14th Amendment. Why was the 14th Amendment put there in the first place? Why was the Equal Protection Clause inserted? And it says that equal protection of the law. Protection. What is being protected? What is being protected? Well, what is the purpose of law? Let's go really in depth. What is the purpose of law in general? The purpose of law is to protect individual rights. That's what it is. Law is enacted and put into place to secure and protect rights. For instance, we have the right to life, and so murder is illegal. Very simple. There are laws against murder and punishments for breaking the law. That law protects a right. We have the right to property, and so theft is illegal. We have the right to a fair trial, and so perjury is illegal. If you get up there on the stand and you lie under oath, it's illegal because that violates someone's right to a fair trial. It's no longer fair if you're up there and lying. And so there is a law put in place to protect an individual right. That is the purpose of law. So when it says equal protection of the law, it means that there is equal protection of your rights. That the law will protect everyone's rights equally. That's what it means. But how can I confidently say that the clause means specifically protection of rights? Well, here's why. If it's not just rights, if it's equal protection for everything, then I could easily say that welfare is not constitutional because it's not an equal protection. There are only certain people who get welfare. I'm not allowed to get welfare because I earn too much money. So is there equal protection if we are not just talking, if we're not just talking about rights, if we're talking about everything, is there equal protection with welfare? No, because I can't get it. So welfare would be unconstitutional, and so would Social Security and food stamps and so many other things based on the Equal Protection Clause. But the thing is, welfare isn't a right. And so the government can set restrictions on welfare, and they can, and who can receive it. They set income restrictions on it, so only certain people can get it. You have to meet certain restrictions, certain qualifications, and apply for those benefits. If the government gives out a benefit, they put certain restrictions or qualifications that you have to meet in order to get that benefit. It's the same as a driver's license. Having a driver's license isn't a right, it's a benefit. We all know this. The government hands it out, and they set qualifications that you have to meet in order to keep that benefit, in order to keep your driver's license. So neither welfare nor a driver's license are a right. If they were a right, then you couldn't restrict who can use it. You can't restrict who has free speech, for instance. You can't restrict who has free speech, so only certain people have it. You can't restrict who is free from unreasonable searches. You can't restrict who has the right to keep and bear arms, even though the left does this all the time and does everything they can to do that. That's why it's unconstitutional. You can't restrict somebody's rights. If it is a right, you cannot restrict who is allowed to use it, because we are all allowed to enjoy our rights. That is why the 14th Amendment says equal protection of the law. It is the equal protection of our rights under the law. Because what was happening in the South was that blacks were being denied their rights. They had a different set of rights than whites did. And so the 14th Amendment was put in place, this section specifically, to guarantee that blacks not only had the same rights as white people, but that the laws protected their rights equally as well. This clause of the 14th Amendment does not apply to government-created benefits. It only applies to rights. And marriage, as I already said, and as I started with, and this is the reason why I always started with, marriage is not a right. In fact, I want to clear something up. We aren't even talking about the right or the ability to get married. This is very important. Gay couples can go to a church or wherever they want to go. You can go wherever you want to go, and you can have whatever ceremony you want to have, and you can be married. There you go. We are not talking about the ability or freedom to get married. That's not what is in question here. What is in question is whether or not the government simply recognizes your marriage and gives you the benefits of that recognition. Notice the word benefits. This is the little word game that I often talk about on the show and sometimes on the site. Because the argument is framed as the right to marry, and that's not true. It's the right to have the government recognize your marriage. Maybe it seems like a small difference, but it's actually really quite big. So if government recognition of your marriage was a right, then this judge would be correct, because there wouldn't be equal protection of your rights in the laws of Texas. But it's not. It's not, and that's why the judge is wrong, and that's why I say this ruling is incorrect. The government recognition of your marriage and the benefits that come with it is not a right. It is a benefit that the government creates and hands out, and therefore can lawfully and constitutionally place restrictions and qualifications that you have to meet in order to get that benefit. Just like welfare, just like food stamps, just like a driver's license. They're all benefits that the government hands out. You have to be below a certain income level. That is the qualification for the benefit of welfare or food stamps. You have to have an income at a certain level or below. That's the qualification you have to meet because it's a benefit. You have to have a marriage between one man and one woman. That is the qualification for government recognition of your marriage and the benefits that come with it. And that's absolutely legal and it's absolutely constitutional because of one simple fact. And this is, again, why I always start where I started. Government recognition of your marriage is not a right. And so the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment does not apply. There are 2 points that I want to make real quick before we go, because we're pretty much out of time and my voice is still not quite recovered, still very dry, so my voice is starting to give out. But there are 2 points that I want to make. First is this. Let's go back to the case. One of the plaintiffs had been married in either Massachusetts or New York, I don't really remember, but they had been married in one of the states legally, and their marriage was not recognized by the state of Texas. That's why they're suing. So let's put aside that government recognition of your marriage is not a right. Put that aside for a second, and I want to draw a parallel here. If I'm in Texas, and I have a pistol permit, or a concealed carry permit, and I go up to New York, who would never recognize that permit from Texas, couldn't I sue under the very same premise? Because I actually have a right to keep and bear arms. Unlike the case that we're talking about now, this actually deals with rights when I'm talking about guns. So isn't that an unequal protection of the law in the exact same way that this case is being argued? It seems like it to me. I have a right. That right is protected under the laws of Texas. But yet when I go to New York, it's not protected. It's the exact same principle. It's the exact same premise as the case that we're talking about, except I'm actually talking about a real right. And in all honesty, whoever the gun rights people are, any lawyers or the NRA or whatever, they should go after this. They should use this to go after gun laws. Absolutely. Point number 2. I want to draw one last parallel before we end. So let's just pretend for a second. Let's go off into fantasy land for a second. And let's pretend that the government recognition of your marriage is actually a right. Let's pretend that for a second. If that's the case, then shouldn't you be able to marry more than one person? Because if the government recognition of your marriage is a right, then who are you to deny that right to somebody who wants to marry 2 people? I'm called a homophobe and a hater, and I'm called all kinds of things because I want to draw a line and say, no, this is where we recognize marriage. This is where it is. And I'm called all those names just because of that. But let's say gay marriage goes through, and it's a right to have the government recognize your marriage. Then then you can't be against polygamy or polyandry or any kind of multiple partner marriages. You can't be against it. Because then you're the one drawing the line. And now you're called a hater or whatever the heck else, stupid words that somebody will come up with to polarize you and your position. Because if it really is a right for the government to recognize your marriage, then why do you draw the line at 1? Why is that? Is an arbitrary line that you just draw at 1? No. Well, then you would have to recognize somebody marrying 4 people. They get married. It's a right. If it truly is a right, it's not, but I'm just saying let's pretend. If it actually is a right, then you can't deny somebody the recognition of that marriage, no matter how many they married. You could marry 20 people, and if it's a right, you cannot deny them the government recognition of all those marriages. Like I said, once you start going outside of the scope of where it should be, once you decide, okay, we're going to decide that marriage is now a right, you get into some very slippery territory there. Once you start just creating rights out of thin air, you get into some really hairy territory, and it does not lead you down, in my opinion, it does not lead you down a very good path. So just keep that in mind, because if it is your position that government recognition of your marriage is a right, then you cannot restrict it. And I'm just taking the most logical and easy step to saying that you would marry multiple people. I'm not going to the crazy steps of marrying like animals or 4-year-olds. I don't have to go there. But like I said, if it's a right, you cannot restrict it. Keep that in mind. So that's the analysis. That's the great part. The constitutional analysis, the law analysis. This judge ruled incorrectly. It does not apply under the equal protection of the 14th Amendment because government recognition of your marriage is not a right. The equal protection of the law only applies to rights. Because anything that the government creates as a benefit, they can restrict and set qualifications to earn that benefit. That's the big difference. And that is why I always start the gay marriage conversation with marriage is not a right. And if you really want to get technical, not even getting technical, if you want to be accurate, government recognition of your marriage is not a right. Neither are.